Everyone, welcome back, and now we're going to get started on Unit 4, our last unit, okay? But don't get excited because it is the longest unit in APCSA. There's about 17 topics that we need to talk about. And the unit is going to be called Data Collections, okay? So all we've been doing, if you think about it, okay, we were dealing with data from the very beginning. We started learning how to handle variables, and these variables were data, right? And if we had similar data that represent characteristics of a certain object, we encapsulated them as objects and created class files. Now let's think about, well, so those data, those encapsulated instance variables, they represent an object. But now let's think about cases when we will have multiple kinds of data. So like student scores, okay? If there's 100 student scores, will you create 100 variables? Will you create 100 instance variables, okay? So that's where data collections come in. So these data collections help us manage these large sets of data. And that's what we'll be looking at throughout this unit. And there will be different types of data collections. There are many more in Java, but we will look at three specific ones, okay? All right, the first topic is going to be ethical and social issues around data collection. So before we actually get into the data collection, what we can do with it, we first need to talk about what can happen with these data and what we need to watch out for, and how we can be responsible programmers when it comes to data collection, because like data helps us greatly, especially like tech companies. They use these data collected to make their services better, and then come up with new innovations and stuff. But those processes isn't always good. So you might have seen a lot of these on the news sometimes, how our privacy, our data gets leaked, and that comes at a sacrifice of our personal information. So as programmers, we need to be very, very responsible. If we are going to deal with these data, we need to always be responsible and try to protect these data as much as we can. So why this matters to programmers? As programmers, we have ethical responsibilities. Your code handles real people's data. Privacy breaches can harm individuals. Biased algorithms can perpetuate discrimination. Poor data quality leads to wrong decisions. Okay, so what impact does it have? The real impact would be on medical diagnosis, loan approvals, job application, criminal justice decisions, and all of these cases. I won't go into these specific cases a lot, but all of these have faced some kind of issues, ethical and social issues, especially when the beginning stages of AI, when companies try to implement AI, the training data that they were trained off on, that kind of caused discrimination. So if you're curious, you guys can go look up the cases. The exam won't specifically test you on this specific topic, but again, just like we had one of these topics before, and as programmers, we just need to be aware of how to be responsible and what kind of dangers there are, okay? So again, I've said this before, with great power comes great responsibility, okay? So personal privacy at risk. When using a computer, personal privacy is at risk. So where is our data collected? So when you sign up for a website, or when you go into a website, sometimes the websites will ask you to accept all cookies. Yeah, so literally they're giving you a cookie, and in return they're taking your data. Okay, so data collection points are every website you visit, every app you use, every online purchase that you make, every social media post, if you have location services turned on your phone. So everywhere you visit, your location is being tracked. So here, when developing new programs, programmers should attempt to safeguard the personal privacy of the user. So these will be, these are where our data is collected, and if you become programmers, in charge of these kind of services, then it means you also have to worry about how to safeguard these data that you're collecting from the users. Okay, so what kind of data is being collected? Personal information, it will be like your name, your age, address, phone number, financial information, health record, educational records. So health records include like your insurance as well. So personal information, when we say personal information, it's also referred to as PII. It stands for personally identifiable information. It means these are kind of informations that can identify who you are if someone has access to that data. And also there's behavioral data, so browsing history, purchase history, search queries, app usage patterns. So if used correctly, like these kind of data can be used to make your lives better, right? Like we have that function on our iPhones where they track the usage of your phones, like where you use it every day, and then yeah, those things can be used to kind of to go through like digital detox and stuff. But again, these can also be used against you, for companies to maximize on your behaviors to maximize their profits, right? So the device data will be location, device, IP address, camera, those things. All right, so real-world privacy breaches. Social media data sold to advertisers, location data revealing personal habits, health app data shared with insurance companies, smart home devices recording conversations, facial recognition without consent. So these are all going to be privacy violations. Although, companies will include them in their terms of use, and then when you join their website and just without reading it, if you just click on I agree, then so those terms of use will include that they're going to use your personal data. And in a lot of the countries, when they do, they need to notify that they used your personal data. But not there are companies that do not do that. And yeah, but as programmers, and you guys have bright futures, so you guys will probably be heading companies and stuff. So you guys always need to be aware of the laws around the personal data. And even without the personal data, as developers, regardless of whether we need to notify or anything, we need if there are certain laws, we always need to protect the data that we're dealing with. Okay, that should be your standard practice, regardless of any extraneous requirements. Okay, so consequences would be identity theft, discrimination, stalking, harassment, financial loss, and reputation damage. All right, so again, I've been saying this, as a developer, you need to minimize data collection. Don't over-collect the data, so collect only the data that you would need, okay? Encrypt sensitive data, so mask, literally the names, or, in Korea, like when you try to, so like the social security one, the resident number, like the last digits are always masked when someone tries to view it. So these kind of things, that will be encrypting sensitive data. So use secure connections, implement access controls, regular security updates, clear privacy policies, allow users to delete their data, never share data without consent. So privacy is our fundamental right. We must remember that as programmers. So what is algorithmic bias? So systematic and repeated errors in a program that create unfair outcomes for a specific group of users. So examples would be these, like facial recognition fails on darker skin, resume. So that actually happened a lot, and yes, that really shouldn't happen, right? So resume screening, that also happened to a lot of companies, and we'll talk about that too. So loan algorithms discriminated by zip code. So like zip code would be like I mean, if you don't know what zip code is, it's like postal number, postal code. So here, like if you have income data and then you cross-reference it with the zip code, and that could lead to discriminations, right? So your program should all consider this and try to be as fair as possible. Okay. Voice assistants don't recognize accents. That actually happened to Siri in the beginning. So translation assumes male pronouns. Yeah, that also became an issue with a lot of these translation platforms. So key points: bias in data, bias in results. So, you know, back in the days, people weren't really aware of it when these platforms were coming out. So, but now, as responsible programmers, we should all consider these when we're developing things, okay? So, where does bias come from? So, historical bias. So, for example, if our program, like our AI, if we train it based on past data, so if that past data contains some kind of discrimination, well, that we can't really see immediately, but like if it has a pattern in that data, then yeah, the AI that trains off on that data is going to have some kind of a bias, right? So we also have representation bias, measurement bias, aggregation bias, evaluation bias. So like, yeah, so representation bias, if we don't have like a data set that represents everyone, okay, so some of the people, like our service may be accurate for only some groups of people, while it won't be as accurate for some people. So again, so these are the biases that you need to consider. So always think about the source of the data, and yeah. So data collection methods matter. Essential knowledge. So programmers should be aware of the data set collection method and the potential for bias. So this is where, you know, computer science kind of joins together with statistics a lot. So yeah, like if you're taking a CSA, you should also consider taking statistics. I, for myself, did a lot of, so when I did my PhD, like a lot of my work involved data. So data science, and also if you're interested in what's called data science, so you need to know both computer science and statistics very well. So, all right, so example, survey bias, so online only, it will exclude those without the internet or anyone who's very proactive towards this. So these are going to be like statistical techniques that you learn actually in AP Stat as well. So before using data, you need to understand how it was collected, identify potential biases, consider your limitations. All right, and data quality issues. Some data sets are incomplete or contain inaccurate data. So problems, this causes incorrect results, program crashes, wrong decisions, inefficient processing. So examples would be misleading values, having nulls in there, like duplicate entries, outdated information. So you need to also check for biases and also whether it's a good quality or not. So if you're like trying to do research on like people's perceptions towards AI, you can't use a data set that's like from 10 years ago, right? Because it's been evolving so fast, then you would need to use the most recent data possible. So like, how do we actually handle these in actual code? So, you know, like we've all talked about this. We need to check if, you know, an object, if a data point is null or not. Okay, so that's one of the practices that we can always do. So if we have a null, then if we use a method on it, it's just going to crash our program. So we need to kind of filter that out using the if statements. And here, you know, we can also use like extra methods that will validate our data. So this would validate this. For example, this would be like a method that would validate whether our data is in the correct format or not. So these kind of things you can do. You know, apart from data collection or what kind of data you're doing, within the code itself, you need to include these kind of checks that would handle the bad data. And choosing the right data must match your specific question or problem. So, you know, using US data for global predictions, using adult data for children's products. So it means if you want to do something, you need to have the right kind of data. Okay, so is this data relevant to my problem? So like if using the US only data for global predictions, that would give you, again, a biased result, right? And dangers of data misuse, using data for the wrong purpose. Example 1 would be medical data collected for research. It's misused for insurance pricing. Impact would be discrimination. Social media data collected for friend connections, misused for political manipulation. Impact would be our democracy weakened. Okay, so yeah, like you need to, if you collected the data for this specific purpose, you need to use it for that specific purpose. Okay, do not abuse the data that you collected. Okay. All right, one example was like this. So Amazon once used an AI in order to review job applications, and they used like 10 years of their resumes that they received as a training data to train the AI. And the issue was, you know, this was back in the days, so it's an old data, and you know, back in the days there were apparently the data set contained higher percentage of males. And the result was the algorithm ended up penalizing female applicants because the AI trained on a biased data set. Okay, so they scrapped the system, and this tells us that we need to first check the integrity of the data first before we train something with it. So before using data, ask yourself: is it legal? Of course, it has to be legal, right? Is it ethical? Is it transparent? Is it necessary? So yeah, like you might think, hey, let's just use this data. Ooh, we have a good result. But again, data is something you need. So like you need to be aware that data is something very sensitive. Okay, it's everyone's right. Okay, so when you're handling data, you need to keep these in your mind. Okay, so the best practice is to have diverse development teams, diverse test data, regular bias audits, meaning you got to check your data set to see if that contains any biases. So transparent algorithms, user control over data, and so on. So remember, technology should help everyone, not just some of the people. That's the principle that we should be aiming for. So ethical code. So in your code, I mean, although we're not going to do something like this in our curriculum, these are just examples showing what you need to be aware of. So getting user consent first. So when you're like asking for information, you always need to ask for user consent, and only collect necessary data and allow the user to see and delete data. Okay, so you need to have these functionalities. If you become developers and create your own programs, we need to be very responsible. So as future programmers, you will handle sensitive personal data, make decisions that affect people's lives, shape how technology impacts society. So your code, if you're not responsible, it can either protect or violate privacy, promote fairness, or discrimination, include or exclude people. So you need to be aware, depending on how you use it, it can go either ways, all right? So personal privacy is always at risk. So as programmers, we need to safeguard user data in our programs. And we must be aware of the biases that we can occur. And we need to always think about how we can handle these biases. So whether is it in the data level or is it in our code level? So how can we manage this? So yeah, so that was a little bit of a lesson before we actually get into data. I mean, what we talked about here won't actually appear on the exam. Like they won't ask you for, like how to be a responsible programmer. But again, we are going to be going over now the data collections and the algorithms. So when you become programmers in the future, you do need to be aware of what we just talked about, but not for the exam. So now let's get into the actual code and then talk about what these data collections are. Okay? Bye.